The tide was turning. With the Roman grip on Britain loosened, a power vacuum formed, leading to increasing tribal conflicts. Far to the east, warriors took note, sharpening their blades with their eyes fixed on this new horizon, a land ripe for the taking. Hello, and welcome to Impactful Moments, where we explore some of the most, you guessed it, impactful moments in human history. If history is your thing, or you simply enjoy learning new topics, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us to continue creating captivating, impactful historical content. In this video, we will discuss the Anglo-Saxon invasion of Britain, the foundation of English history. It's important to understand that there are debates as to whether or to what extent a quote-unquote invasion occurred. Many historians express skepticism of mass violence based on lacking archaeological evidence. The accounts of the British cleric St. Gildas, who may have had a religious bias against the pagan Germanic tribes, and later the Anglo-Saxon Bede, who bases much of his work on Gildas, provide in-depth accounts that there was indeed a brutal, violent takeover. Whether historically accurate or not, Gildas and Bede's accounts are the ones most commonly historically referenced in association with this transformative period. Modern historical views, while lacking in consensus, suggest that while it is likely that some form of invasion did occur, it was perhaps more gradual and possibly not quite as violent as the early accounts detail. For millennia, an island off mainland Europe, known today as Britain, was inhabited by hunter-gatherers. The island's Neolithic period saw the construction of impressive and mysterious stone structures, like Stonehenge and Avebury, serving as important landmarks and potential religious sites. Through societal development and trade with seafaring civilizations, like the Phoenicians and Greeks, these peoples transitioned into the Bronze and Iron Ages. By the 9th century BCE, Celtic and Belgic tribes from Gaul began migrating onto the island, forming diverse tribal groups like the Britons and the Picts. The Romans first made inroads into Britain under Julius Caesar in the mid-1st century BCE. However, a full-scale conquest wouldn't come until roughly a century later under Emperor Claudius. While in control, the Romans faced continued resistance, particularly from the Picts in the north, ultimately abandoning attempts to conquer the north region of the island, demarcating the Roman frontier in Britain with Hadrian's Wall in 122 CE. By the 5th century, a declining Roman Empire withdrew its legions from Britain, leaving the island to fend for itself. This period, known as sub-Roman Britain, was likely marked by power struggles, instability, and a reversion to decentralized tribes, as the Romanized Britons faced challenges without imperial support. In the mid-5th century, the Britons, led by King Vortigern, appealed to the Roman Empire for help against raiding Pict and Scoti tribes in what became known as the Groan of the Britons, but the failing empire was unable to assist. According to a British cleric named St. Gildas, a key source for this period, Vortigern turned to Germanic tribes from North Germania and South Scandinavia for assistance. These tribes, including, but not exclusively, the Angles, Saxons, Jutes, and to a lesser extent Frisians, known colloquially as the Anglo-Saxons, were led by King Hengist and his brother Horsa. They were invited onto the island and given land in return for their assistance against the belligerent tribes to the north. After successfully aiding the Britons against the Picts, Hengist and his Anglo-Saxons turned on the Britons, conquering the southeast of the island in the mid-5th century, a conquest that attracted further Germanic migration onto the island across the following decades. As noted, while early historical accounts portray a swift and brutal conquest, modern understanding suggests a gradual, potentially even generational process of settlement and cultural influence. The Britons, however, did not submit passively to this Germanic expansion. Leaders like Ambrosius Aurelianus, a figure potentially linked to the legendary King Arthur, may have achieved victories against the Anglo-Saxon King Eil, such as the Battle of Badon Hill or Mons Badonicus, possibly modern-day Bath. This halted the Anglo-Saxon advance, possibly even recovering territory lost to the Germans. E. Gothodin, a work attributed to the Welsh poet Aneurin, contains a veiled reference to King Arthur within this conflict, and Historia Brittonium by Nennius more directly depicts Arthur fighting 12 battles, though this is generally considered a mythological portrayal. Despite this British resistance, by the early 6th century, much of eastern Britain was again under Anglo-Saxon control. By the middle of the century, in South Britain, Ceawlin, the king of Anglo-Saxon Wessex, began migrating his men further west. He ultimately met a coalition of British kings at the Battle of Doorham in 577, where his army routed the Britons, pushing some Britons west into Wales, and causing others to flee to Gaul, where they established Brittany, meaning Little Britain, a region in modern-day France. In the north, Aethelfrith, king of the Anglo-Saxon kingdom of Bernicia, faced off against Eodan mac Gabrain, king of the Gaelic Dal Riata. The Battle of Degsastan, which is dated around 603, saw Aethelfrith's much smaller army rout the Gaels. While the extent of the Gaelic defeat at Degsastan is debated by historians, it likely solidified Bernician rule over the region. Following centuries of war and/or integration, demographic shifts led to a consolidation of power, ultimately leading to the emergence of 7 Anglo-Saxon kingdoms across Britain: Kent, Sussex, Essex, Wessex, East Anglia, Northumbria, and Mercia. These kingdoms would shape the political landscape and cultural identity of the island for centuries to come. The cultural landscape of Britain transformed in the decades following the Anglo-Saxon arrival. Germanic influences began to take root. However, the process was complex, and elements of Celtic and Roman culture likely persisted alongside or even fused with emerging Anglo-Saxon traditions. The Jutes settled in the southeast, the Angles along the east coast, and the Saxons along the southern coast around Jutish territory. Meanwhile, Brittonic culture persisted in western and northern Britain, as well as in Brittany, where many Britons had fled. As these Germanic tribes established themselves, they formed numerous small kingdoms which eventually consolidated into 7 major kingdoms during a period known as the Heptarchy. Alongside the Germanic-dominated areas, Brittonic kingdoms, like Strathclyde and Dumnonia, as well as Welsh kingdoms, such as Powys, continued to exist. Recognizing the permanence of Germanic culture, the Church, under Pope Gregory I, sent a monk named Augustine to convert the Anglo-Saxons to Christianity. Augustine succeeded in converting Aethelberth of Kent, who was the Bretwalda, or overlord of several kingdoms. This significant conversion brought Christianity to Britain, establishing St. Augustine as the first Archbishop of Canterbury, the Kentish capital. While power among the Germanic kingdoms shifted over the subsequent centuries, the new Germanic culture was firmly rooted in Britain. This period marked a profound transformation in British society, as new religious, cultural, and political structures began to take hold, shaping the island's future. The arrival of the Anglo-Saxons in Britain is historically considered the birth of English history from cultural, legal, and linguistic perspectives. This period marked the development of codified legal systems, which may have borrowed from the Roman and Celtic frameworks, but in essence created a novel legal approach. While the Anglo-Saxon era may have ended with the Battle of Hastings in 1066, Anglo-Saxon law is seen as the system that formed the basis for British common law. This new system would evolve and spread its influence far beyond Britain, shaping judicial systems in North America and other British Commonwealth countries. The Anglo-Saxon language also underwent a fascinating transformation, planting the seeds for Old English, named for the Anglo part of Anglo-Saxon. Over the centuries, with influence from Viking invasions and the Norman conquest in the 8th to 11th centuries, this would develop into Middle and eventually Modern English, although this latter transition is a bit hazier. Today, while the numbers may vary, English is likely the most spoken language in the world, with close to 1.5 billion speakers. St. Augustine's Christianization of the Anglo-Saxons may have also played a role in catalyzing the Viking Age. While numerous factors, such as political instability and general seafaring exploration, undoubtedly played a major role, the spread of Christianity in Britain led to the rise of extremely wealthy yet poorly defended monastic sites and towns. These easy targets, such as Linsfern on the east coast of Britain, were the sites of some of the earliest Viking raids and may have set off a chain reaction that affected Europe for centuries. While the Vikings were notorious for their brutality, they also established extensive trade networks across Europe and contributed to the growth of cities, such as Dublin, that still exist today. The establishment of Anglo-Saxon culture in Britain set the stage for a rich history of political evolution and conflict. This culture, while unquestionably modified through various historical events, would eventually develop into the British Empire, one of the most powerful empires in human history. The legacy of the Anglo-Saxons is not just a chapter in British history, but a foundational period that influenced the global trajectory of law, language, religion, and empire building. I hope you enjoyed this video and found this period in history both informative and enlightening. Please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below, and I hope you can join us for another video. Thanks for watching.